to the channel. I'm back to break down this Memorial Day MLB DFS slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Before we get into it, if you do enjoy the content at any point in this video, if you could please take a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll be here all MLB DFS season long, breaking down these MLB DFS slates to help you guys become better MLB DFS players and help you guys win some money night in and night out. We got a little bit of a weird slate today in the sense that DraftKings and FanDuel is going to be offering a couple different games. The Chicago White Sox Cleveland game is going to be featured on the DraftKings slate, which is going to be the front half of a doubleheader, I believe, or the second half, and is only going to be 7 games. So keep that in mind as we go along here. Then we also have the Washington Atlanta game that's going to be featured on the FanDuel slate, which starts at 5:10 p.m. Eastern, and that's not going to be featured on the DraftKings slate. So just a little bit of a disclaimer there. As we're breaking along things, I'll try to remind you of that as we're going through these players player by player. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. If you're getting real serious about MLB DFS and you are interested in some premium package, I do offer that. That's linked below in the description. You get access to all the same tools that I use when building my own lineups. You get my starting pitcher data sheet, hot hitter, Statcast data, splits leaderboard, team hitting data, bullpen data, my power rankings, and my cheat sheet. And yeah, as always, we're going to go ahead and break down the pitchers first in the slate. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. We're going to break down the pitchers you want to go to first, and then we'll get into hitting. And the top guy on the slate today, without a doubt, is going to be Mr. Corbin Burns, taking on the Detroit Tigers. 35.7% K overall, 16.6 swinging strike rate, 41.5% K rate against righties, and a 29.8% K rate against lefties. This guy's been absolutely dominant all season long. And he gets to take on a Detroit Tigers team that we absolutely love targeting. We've been going at these guys all season long because of how much they strike out and just pretty much how bad their lineup is overall. Comes in at 10-6 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they have him priced at 9-9. And as mentioned, in my opinion, far and away the top pitcher on the slate today. So last couple games, he's had a few rough outings. He had to take on the Kansas City Royals, give up 2 runs. The San Diego Padres give up 4 runs. This is going to be a much better matchup for him than those two were. So I think we see him get back on track. Second on the list, we got Carlos Rodon. He's featured on the DraftKings slate as part of that second half or front half of the back-to-back, so it's only going to be 7 games. Honestly, I think I'm going to have a hard time playing anyone that's in that kind of a predicament on today's slate because of how large the slate is. There's plenty of other options to go to, so Rodon's a good option overall as far as his hard contact, giving up, and all that stuff. But I'm a little scared to be going there on a slate where we have so many other options and options that could be pitching the entire game. So Rodon's probably a pass for me, honestly, on the DraftKings slate. You got Charlie Morton taking on the Washington Nationals, 29.1% overall, 12.6 swinging strike rate, 25.3% K rate against righties, and a 33.4% K rate against lefties. Really, really good across the board. The Washington Nationals aren't the best matchup for him, and he hasn't been the best version of himself. And then also, don't forget, this is only featured on the FanDuel slate, so 8-8 on FanDuel. Not sure that I'm really looking to prioritize him. If I fall upon him in my lineup, sure, but we already talked about a guy in Corbin Burns on FanDuel specifically where you only have one pitcher. I think is going to be a big priority for us today. And we have some other guys in some pretty good matchups as well that we go into. Velasquez is a guy that's going to have some more K upside as well. 26.9% K rate overall, 28.3% K rate against righties, and a 24.9% K rate against lefties. So overall, we do prefer to target him in right-handed heavy lineups, or against right-handed heavy lineups if at all possible. And the Reds have a pretty good blended lineup. There's quite a few lefties in there, righty-lefty kind of deal. So Velasquez is a respectable option, not one of my top options on the slate. Same was going to apply for Rich Hill here. 26.6% K rate overall. Gets to take on a Yankee squad that does have a bunch of strikeouts. 27% K rate against righties, and that's exactly who he's going to be facing today. A lot of righties in this New York Yankees lineup. The Yankees have a 4.25 implied run total as well, which means Vegas isn't expecting them to score too many runs, which helps our case in feeling confident in playing Rich Hill. And I definitely think that he's a guy you could be looking to on the slate today. With how his numbers pan out and everything, higher K rate against those right-handed batters. Has done a pretty good job at limiting the hard contact against those right-handed batters as well, and he's taken on a Yankees lineup up and down that is a lot of righties, is a lot of strikeouts, and if he can just keep the ball in the yard, it's in Yankee Stadium, which is a pretty good hitter's ballpark as far as home runs are concerned, as we always talk about, but he should be in pretty good shape to get the win and go the distance in this one if he can just keep the ball on the ground, and his numbers look pretty good, and they match up pretty well in this matchup, surprisingly. So Rich Hill's a good option. James Caprielin take on the Seattle Mariners. Ground ball, fly ball stuff honestly hasn't been the greatest in the world, but he has been limiting the slugging against righties, against lefties. He's been real bad, and for that reason, I'm not all too excited to go to him because while the Seattle matchup is a good one, and we've been targeting them for strikeouts a lot on the season, there are quite a few lefties in there. And his really weak numbers against lefties, just I think it's not really necessary to go to him on a slate like this today, so I'm not going to go to him. Eduardo Rodriguez taking on the Houston Astros. He's a left-handed pitcher, and the Astros just really don't strike out against left-handed pitching or much pitching at all, so I'm not interested there. More interested in a guy like Chris Paddock taking on the Chicago Cubs today. 25% K overall, 29.2% K rate against righties, and a 21.3% K rate against lefties. Really good across the board as far as his stuff's concerned. The strikeout rate hasn't been the greatest, and he has been struggling a little bit this year, but I think he's starting to turn a corner and really get that together. And looking at his most recent starts, you can see compared to the ones early on in the season, he's looked really good. He's had 2 Ks last time out, which isn't exactly going to blow you away. Only 68 pitches against Milwaukee, which is a little bit surprising. He got pulled pretty early in that game, and that's the part that's starting to be a little bit concerning with Paddock. It's like they're not really letting him go the distance. They want like a solid 6 innings out of him. And then once they get that, they're pretty satisfied. They're just like, all right, we can go to the bullpen now, which is not going to exactly make you feel good playing him. So, viable option, but just know that's what you're dealing with risk-wise. Jose Barrios taking on the Baltimore Orioles, a team that's been striking out a bunch on the season. 24.3% K overall, 24.7% K rate against righties, and a 23.9% K rate against lefties. So he's another guy that you could definitely be going to as far as his numbers on the season. I don't think he's really exactly looked the best either, but when you get a matchup against the Baltimore Orioles, that can definitely fix some of your issues. And last time out against the same Orioles team, he had a really good outing. 7 Ks, only 7 hits allowed, 5.2 innings pitch. Of course, we preferred him to get 6 or more, especially on FanDuel. We get that bonus for the quality start. But overall, had a really good game, and I think he could do it again against the same Baltimore Orioles team. And I think he's definitely a viable option for you today. And then once we get past him, things start to get a little bit less interesting, honestly. I'm not really looking to target much of any of these guys going further. Dylan Bundy would be the last guy taking on the San Francisco Giants. 24.2% overall, 28.9% K rate against righties, and a 19.5% K rate against lefties. So we really like to target him against right-handed heavy matchups. And the San Francisco Giants don't exactly have the most right-handed heavy lineup. So that's the little bit of downside to Dylan Bundy as well. And I'm not sure that he's my top option. And then as mentioned, that's why once we get to this point, I'm not really getting too excited about anyone else on this slate today. So I think we can go ahead and move along to bats. As always, I like to go ahead and instruct my sheet by Sierra, skill interactive ERA. It's a good way of determining how good a pitcher's been so far in his career and how good he's expected to be in the future. And the worst guy on the slate today is going to be Joe Ross. Keep in mind, this is only on the FanDuel slate, but ground ball, fly ball stuff is not the best. He has a 427 slugging given up to righties, a 479 slugging given up to lefties. Really, really bad against lefties. Against righties, he's actually been pretty respectable, and the Braves do have a lot of righties, so keep that in mind. But as far as who we can target in this matchup, the lefties, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Ender Inciarte. No issues with you going to any of those guys. And the righties you could stack up as well. The Washington bullpen's not the greatest. If they're able to get Joe Ross out of this game early, and Joe Ross, even though he's better against righties, he's not the best against righties either. And the Atlanta Braves have a bunch of talent, but I do prefer to target the lefties pretty extremely here. So that would be my advice there. Johnny Cueto taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Actually hasn't been the worst in the world. The ground ball, fly ball stuff's a little bit underwhelming. Really not that bad against right-handed hitting, though. Once again, it's similar to the guy that we just talked about, Joe Ross. Very bad against lefties. A 470 slugging, giving up 350 WOBA. Not going to get the job done. And he has to take on a Los Angeles Angels team tonight that definitely has a left-handed bat that you could target in Jared Walsh at the 2 spot specifically. The guy has a ton of pop. We'd really like to have Ohtani in the lineup, but if he's not, we can't play him, of course, which is a little bit unfortunate. But Jared Walsh would definitely be a guy that I would be looking to as a one-off in this one. Wade Miley taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Ground ball, fly ball stuff is actually pretty respectable against both sides of the plate. Gives up a 410 slug in the righty, so we really just prefer to target him with right-handed bats that crush left-handed pitching. And as far as the matchup today with the Philadelphia Phillies, I'm not getting too excited to play this team, to be honest. They definitely do have some righties that crush lefties. Guys like Andrew McCutchen, Gene Segura, Rhys Hoskins at the top of the order. But then the rest of the lineup is looking really watered down right now. They have some injuries they're dealing with. They only have a 4.15 implied run total. So I think that Wade Miley could actually be an interesting pitching option on this slate today rather than the bats. I had talked about maybe not wanting to play anyone else pitching-wise, but the Philadelphia Phillies have been striking out a bunch. And that could be an interesting spin in your tournament lineups if you could put some Wade Miley in your lineups. Jorge Lopez taking on the Minnesota Twins. This is a guy that I really like to target all season long. 439 slugging, giving up to right and hitting a 549 slugging, giving up to lefties. Really bad against those left-handed bats. And when looking at the Minnesota lineup up and down, they definitely do have quite a few righties, but they do have quite a few lefties as well. Alex Kirilloff, Trevor Lenark, and actually, you know what? There might be no Max Kepler, so their lefties are going to be limited down to about 2. So, I mean, you got Jorge Polanco at the top of the order. He's a switch hitter. And the guys in the middle are like Nelson Cruz, Miguel Sano, Josh Donaldson. They all have pop. And overall, Jorge Lopez is a guy we like to target with both sides of the plate, to be honest. It's just his ground ball, fly ball stuff's a lot better against righties. So I do like the stack overall. Would like it a lot more if there were a few more lefties in there. But it's in Camden Yards, in Baltimore, which is a great hitting environment. Pulling up the chart for you guys like I always like to do. You can see the home runs at Camden Yards is definitely something that we like to target. So, yeah, can definitely be going to the Twins. Next on the list, we have Jose Urquidy taking on the Boston Red Sox, another guy that's very splits heavy. He's actually a lot better against left-handed bats than he is against right-handed bats. He's a right-handed pitcher himself, but has really struggled against those right-handed bats. A 45 slugging, giving up 342 WOBA, 44.4% fly ball rate, and just giving up a lot of hard contact to these right-handed bats. So as far as who we're looking to target on the Red Sox, that's exactly who we're going to be going to, those right-handed bats. Enrique Hernandez, JD Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, Christian Vasquez, Hunter Renfroe, Bobby Dahlbeck. All bats with plenty of power, just they strike out quite a bit, and Urquidy doesn't strike out right-handed bats, and he gives up a lot of hard contact. So could be a recipe for success there if you're stacking up the Boston Red Sox. Keegan Thompson taking on the San Diego Padres. We're dealing with a 15 innings pitched sample size. So far in his career, he has been really solid across the board. Honestly, I'm not really getting all too excited to target him with San Diego Padres bats. They are on the road in Chicago, Wrigley Field, which looks like there might be winds blowing out. 9-mile-an-hour winds blowing out the center, which Chicago is the #1 stadium impacted by wind in the league. If it's blowing out, it's very significant. If it's blowing in, it's very significant. You got to keep this in mind when you're playing batters at Wrigley Field. So, you can make an argument that for the reason that it's a win game, that you have more interest in these Padres than you typically would. And I have a feeling they're going to have a pretty decent run line. So right now, Keegan Thompson's numbers look really good across the board. I might be willing to overrate that just based upon the talent of the San Diego Padres lineup and the wind. And they're going to be in a great hitting environment on the road. So we'll have to dig into that a little deeper. Pitch data and all that stuff through the day. My patrons keep an eye on my power rankings, my cheats, and that kind of stuff to keep an eye out for if I'm liking them. Cal Cantrell taking on the Chicago White Sox. Not looking to play him because the second half of the doubleheader, so it's only going to be a 7-inning pitch game. I don't really think we really need to review. As far as stacking against him, I don't really want to stack either. I know we're talking about bats, but I mean, a 433 slugging going up to lefties, has really struggled against left-handed bats, so the Chicago White Sox lefties, but you're still only going to get 7 innings out of these guys. So, I mean, maybe you get lower ownership. Maybe they all hit home runs, and maybe that really does pay off in tournaments over on DraftKings, but it's a little bit scary going there, and yeah, if you're going there, you just understand the risk you're doing. Maybe it is smart for tournaments and it pays off for you. If they all hit home runs and the other team's playing 2 more innings but they don't hit any home runs, you're still going to be looking good, of course. So I wouldn't rule it out. And then moving further along, we can see Vince Velasquez is a guy that does give up quite a bit of hard contact. Overall, across the board, he has a pretty decent high K rate, but he does give up a 467 slugging to righties and a 468 slugging to lefties. Taking on a Cincinnati squad today that does have a bunch of power, so they're a team that we could possibly look into a 4.35 implied run total. Eugenio Suarez, Jesse Winker, Nick Castellanos, Tyler Dakins, Tyler Stevenson. And then once we get past them, the lineup's getting a little watered down. Again, a lot of teams dealing with a lot of injuries, but the top of that lineup really has a lot of power and a lot of talent, so could be targeting him. Dylan Bundy, we already talked about his issues against left-handed bats, specifically a 454 slugging, giving up 329 WOBA. Not going to get the job done, and we could definitely play some San Francisco Giants lefties. It's in San Francisco, which isn't the best hitting environment, unfortunately. Pulling the chart up for you guys here as far as how San Francisco fares out for those hitters. From a hitting environment aspect, you can see Oracle Park really red for those home runs, which is why we don't exactly like to target it the most. But if these guys are able to hit the ball like 450 feet, they still get out of the stadium, and they can still get some home runs on the board for you. And yeah, Tyler Alexander is the next guy. Logan Gilbert, first of all, I guess we can talk about. He's really been struggling against left-handed bats so far. He only has a 10 innings pitch sample size, but against those lefties, he has been really struggling. Young talent, that's supposed to be the real deal, but sometimes these guys come up and they have to work through some struggles in the majors to really figure out what they need to do to adjust and stay in the majors. And these lefties on this Oakland Athletics team, I think, are going to be an interesting one to go to today. And they've got a bunch of them with a bunch of pop. Matt Olson, Seth Brown, Jed Lowry, Mitch Moreland in the middle order. You could also play Tony Kemp in the 2 spot. More of a contact speed threat, but if he's going to be that high in the lineup, he's very cheap, it appears. And you could stack up those guys. Tyler Alexander, take it on this Milwaukee squad. Really bad against right-handed hitting. A 539 slugging, giving up 43.6% hard contact rate, a 373 WOBA. Not really good across the board. And this Milwaukee squad isn't the best lineup in the world, but we can definitely target the right-handed power bats. Guys like Willy Adames, Avisail Garcia, Lorenzo Cain, Manny Pena, Keston Hiura, Luis Urias, up and down there, those right-handed bats. Tyler Alexander doesn't scare me from that aspect, so like those guys. And then the last thing that I would mention is targeting Jameson Taillon with left-handed bats. Tampa Bay Rays going into Yankee Stadium. Taillon's been pretty respectable across the board so far this season. He's a little bit inconsistent. He does get blown up from time to time, and if he's going to get blown up, it is typically from those left-handed bats. And it is in Yankee Stadium with that short right porch, so if they're going to be able to yank it down the line for these Rays, the lefties are definitely intriguing to me. Brandon Lau, G-Man Choi, Austin Meadows, Joey Wendell. You got Taylor Walls, Kevin Kiermaier, Brett Phillips. Looks like there's going to be quite a few lefties in here, and I'm sure they're going to be putting in every single one that they can, knowing Jameson Taillon splits, trying to combat them and trying to take advantage while they can of his struggles against those lefties. So that is my overall breakdown of this Memorial Day MLB DFS slate. Before I let you guys go, I got to give you my home run call of the day. Let's get into it. And my home run call of the day today is going to be Eugenio Suarez taking on Vince Velasquez. I had mentioned Vince Velasquez's hard contact. He just gives up a bunch of hard contact. 467 slugging, 43.3% hard contact rate, 334 WOBA, 46.3% fly ball rate against those right-handed bats. And when specifically looking on what he throws, on average, looking at about a 93 to 94 mile-an-hour fastball. Very reliant on that fastball, goes to about 60% of the time. And Eugenio Suarez absolutely crushes that pitch. A 431 ISO with a 450 WOBA. And as far as the secondary pitch, Vince Velasquez is very reliant on the curveball, and Suarez crushes that pitch as well. A 241 ISO with a 300 WOBA, 38.71% hard contact rate. Love this spot for Eugenio Suarez. Get him in your lineups because he is my home run call of the day. So there you have it, guys. Eugenio Suarez. Get him in your lineups. And that is all from me in this one. If you did enjoy the content, if you could please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That would be greatly appreciated. Wish you guys all the best of luck tonight, and we will see you in the next one.